There are healers on this planet with the power to soften the suffering of mankind, yet they have remained in the recesses of the world, abused, discarded, and labeled as trash. This is The Touch of a Mustang. I am your host, Shalise Clough, and I'm here to tell the story of wild horses, Mustangs, and the humans who are discovering and sharing their gifts while working to protect their well-being and preserve their spirit, so this divine power won't be lost. Join us on this quest with the Wild Mustang. Randy Helm grew up on a ranch in Arizona. He had a career in police work before transitioning to a pastoral ministry, and then beginning his work in the Wild Horse Inmate Program, where he taught inmates to train horses while learning the skills that are a natural byproduct for a better life. Randy uses a least resistance method of training, working with BLM Mustang horses, many of which he trained for use in the Border Patrol. Randy also wrote a book called Lessons from Horses. Unfortunately, we lost Randy's sound on the last 10 minutes or so of this conversation, but there are a lot of fantastic opportunities to learn from him and see his work online. Randy, thank you so much for being here today, and I'm really super excited to talk to you. I got one of my horses from the Wild Horse Inmate Program up in Colorado.
Okay.
So I'm really excited to hear about your experiences and kind of what you learned and the work you did there.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. In Colorado, the program there, the training program, really was the program that I modeled the Arizona program after I knew the guys up there. I've been working with them for a number of years. So when we started the program, I thought, I'm not going to try to reinvent the wheel here. And they had a successful program. So I went up there and met with them a few times. I actually had gotten a couple of horses from their inmate program.
Oh, nice.
So yeah.
From out of Canyon City?
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
So really I started working with wild horses in 1994, and I was training some, not to any extent that I ended up training, but I had a Arab and a ranch kind of mixed breed horse, and had somebody told me about they had a wild horse adoption, and so I went out and ended up adopting a mare, and she and back then, 94, they didn't have the larger holding facilities, so typically the horses were pretty short from roundup or gather to adoption. They prepped them, and so they were.
I've heard they kind of moved them faster then.
Yeah, so now they have such a large number. They try to kind of move them around to give the best opportunity to get them adopted. But got her home, and she really became not only a great horse, she became an amazing kid's horse. She just put a kid on her, and she just.
And this was just your personal horse that you just went out and got a personal Mustang.
Yeah, and what happened there? The state, it was just one of those. You look at the sequence of events, but the media was out there at that adoption, and so the state lead for the BLM called me over, and he said, they want to follow a person through the whole process and follow them home. And so it was on the news that evening. And then about, a few months later.
Was that kind of randomly? They just randomly picked you out? And you said, sure, come on.
Yeah. Well, and I had got to know him a little bit. And so it was, so we had some conversations, and so then a few months later, I got a call, and they were filming. This will tell you how long ago it was. A VHS little thing to give to all of the adopters on. So you want to adopt a wild horse, and so they asked if they could come and film that part of it, at least at my facility. And so so it just one thing led to another. I got more and more involved in the Bureau of Land Management aspect, and then I believe it was 99 was the first time they asked me if I would do a couple of clinics. They had people at one of the adoption events that wanted to see a clinic on how to gentle them. And so I did 2 horses that day. And then they said, how many clinics can you do, a year? And so I would end up doing about once every 2 months, I do a clinic at the adoption, and I do 12 to 15 horses in a weekend. And so it was I got to make a lot of my mistakes in front of a crowd, which was a nice way to learn.
Good
But
learning experience.
yeah, yeah. So see, this worked last time. Oh, it didn't work this time. So so
Yeah,
anyway,
try
that's
something
that
new.
kind of. One thing led to another, and I became one of the early TIP trainers, the Trainer Incentive Program trainers.
Mm-hmm.
And back then they had a lot more stipulations on it, but that was fun as well. I just love working with the horse. My problem would I would fall in love with with them and want to say, okay, I
Yeah.
can't keep them all.
You can't keep
So,
everyone. So were
no.
you training full time?
No. So at that point, I actually went from I was raised on a ranch
Mm-hmm.
here in Arizona, and it was central Arizona, more in the mountains, which is where the more of the
Yeah.
ranching is.
Is it
And
Jerome, right? Is that where you?
yeah, well, that was where I went to high school, so it was
Oh,
near.
okay.
So Jerome,
Outside of it then. Yeah.
so yeah, Jerome. Actually, when I was in high school, there it was a ghost town already, but they had the
Yeah.
old school up there. And in the 60s, 68, 69, the hippies took over.
Yeah.
So Jerome was kind of an interesting town.
Yeah. It's an
And
interesting
then
town. That's the area I grew up in, so it's fun to
okay,
hear
yeah.
about your experience there. Well, Prescott. I grew up in
So
Prescott.
well, the old ranch was between Camp Verde and Strawberry up in the mountains
Okay.
there.
Yeah.
And so my
Nice
granddad
area.
started. My granddad was hired to develop and supervise small power plant, Fossil Creek. They built a flume system through there, and my dad started working for the ranch on the other side of the mountain. And so then when I was 9, they asked me if I would go to live with or go to stay with my grandparents for the summer to help them with their ranch and farm.
Hmm.
And 5 years later, I was still there. It was a long summer.
You never left.
Right. They had thoroughbred racehorses and
Okay.
would transition them to ranch horses, cow horses.
Oh yeah. That's
So
cool.
it was a great way to learn as far as Mustangs, because with Mustangs you're dealing with getting energy down, getting them a job to do, getting cues built in. That's
Right.
so when a racehorse is great for the gates open and runs real well to the left, but you don't need to work in a lot of cues. So
Yeah.
so that was just a good prep. But back to I went military and then I went law enforcement. I was a police officer in the
Okay.
Dallas Fort Worth area,
Mm-hmm.
and just slowly kind of moved back into working with horses. My degree is actually in pastoral ministries. I finished
Oh,
my
okay.
degree and then I stayed with the police department. Started undercover narcotics, and I went patrol, then chaplaincy. So
Huh.
then my
Yeah.
last 10 years was chaplain.
All kinds of
And
experiences then.
what's
Broad
that?
range. I said
Yeah,
that's a broad range.
yeah. And I think in the long term, I really feel like I came full circle in many
Yeah.
respects, as far as then start working for the prison on the other side of it. When I was working undercover narcotics, the new drug was crystal meth. And
Mm,
so once it hit the street, it just really was easily accessible. So
yeah.
the majority of inmates I had the majority of inmates in prison are there because of drugs. And
Mm,
so it was kind of on the other side of it, but working
yeah.
with that population of people really became, I think, more of an asset than a detriment. Matter of fact, I would have people. Well, so I went pastoral ministry. I wouldn't say I never fit in, but in a
Mm,
way, I kind of didn't. I don't like. I can't stand fundraising, and I don't like hype, and there are just certain elements that I just really
yeah.
don't like. And so people would ask me and say, "Well, you're working with wild horses and working with convicted felons. Aren't you afraid?" I
Yeah.
pastor the church.
Yeah.
The inmates need a
Yeah.
reason to kill you. Church people anyway. So
Yeah.
so and then I started doing cowboy church. Well, really, I started using horses for an illustration with the guys on just a
Yeah.
lot of issues, and then that developed into doing cowboy church things, which is the same thing, just using a horse as an illustration. I
Yeah.
had my former wild Mustang came out of Oregon. I had him in every prison yard at Florence State Prison. Had him in the death row supermax yard,
Wow.
and then the women's prison. So we'll take him right in the middle of everything. So, I got the sound system set up and talk about getting the past behind you, overcoming obstacles. So there's so many things you can illustrate. I would tell them that if horses weren't as forgiving as they were, especially the old way of training, no horses would have gotten trained.
Yeah.
So anyway, it gave me one of the things that I would say to the guys regularly is, you get a horse that, let's say, you've had 90 days or 100 days, whatever, on the horse, and it's gone from being wild, untouched to riding it through obstacles and everything. So if you took that same horse back into the old herd, it would go back to old behavior. So it really gave me a little bit of a language to say, when you get out, it's really
kind
important.
Kind of a new view for them that maybe related a little bit better.
And almost all the guys can repeat that back. That, okay, Mr. Helm, I found a new herd, or I figured out what happened. They violate probation. I got involved. I got back with my old herd. So it gives a little bit of perspective. So I think
they were able to relate to it.
Yeah, and just working with the wild horses, and the guys have that sense of satisfaction, bonding. I had guys that I never knew how to love until I started working with these horses. So I come from very abusive, very sad backgrounds. So it was really healing for them.
So how did you move from the police force, training horses on the side, it sounds like, and then into the Wild Horse Inmate Program?
Yeah. So at that time, I was chaplain I was in Arlington, Texas, and then I came back out to Arizona and became chaplain for Scottsdale Police Department. And then I was pastoring a church in Glendale, Arizona. And it was doing clinics for the BLM and doing training. So I was at had a clinic in Apache Junction, and so they bring this horse in, and she was just this really muscled, blue roan, pretty active, and I noticed this entourage of people came from the state prison to see the clinic. And by the end of that, I did 2 hours. Took work with her, and then took a break, and then worked with her again. By the end of it, she's locked in. She's standing right beside me. I've got a rope rubbing her, and then I'd put a little pressure. She'd take a step towards me. I'd release the pressure. So, I tell people, I had a horse that made me look good. Is a good thing, because not all horses, will come around that quick. Yeah. But at the end of that, the vice president for corrections, Arizona Correctional Industries, asked me if I would send him my resume, and the reason they showed up, though, there was a little conversation before that on the program, because I got a call from the Bureau of Land Management. I was in Tennessee. I don't know if you're familiar with John Lyons, John and Josh, but I was out there. We were doing a clinic trainer certification. I got a call from the Bureau of Land Management and asked me if I would be a consultant when I got back, because the prison was wanting to start a program. And so I'd love to be a consultant. And then the more I got to think about it, I thought, I think that'd be a fun program to start. So that was really what it was. It was already a little conversation. And then when they showed up, asked me if I would send my resume in, and then they called and offered me the job. And at that point, we had 0 horses, no corrals, no, it was just, so it was brand new program, getting policies and procedures and facilities was the first objective. And I was still doing clinics and stuff for the Bureau of Land Management, because it was a cooperative venture, a partnership between federal government, state government, and the prison, which really was the biggest frustration, because you have these layers of politics. With the whole wild horse industry, there's just a lot of politics.
Yeah, it seems like there is a lot of bureaucracy that kind of is barring that from happening more, it sounds like. I think in Canyon City, they don't even have the program anymore.
No, and when that started unraveling, I talked to Brian, who was over the program, and he said it just it was just an impasse. They didn't want to fund anything. And normally that happens because it should be a break-even deal. Where, the government's not wanting the state to be amassing a lot of money, but they don't want it to be an expense for them. So if you get a change of administration, they say, hey, we need to be charging more for this, and that's where usually the conflict is. Or they just don't want to be involved because there's controversy just on whether they should ever be rounded up. So sometimes they don't want to be involved with the controversy surrounding them. So there's a few issues. But Canyon City, I think they're somewhat of a holding facility, but they have facilities for 3,000. So my facility was 1,500. So, it was just
a little bit smaller.
Yeah. Great program. And like I said, they really became kind of the model, I think, for how that should be run. Carson City, Nevada, is a really good program as well, prison program.
Yeah, I wish that they would get more going. I feel like it's such a powerful use of Mustangs that we have.
Yeah.
Anyway, and just so good for helping with personal development, self-improvement, mental health. Yeah,
all the above. Well, so the guys coming into prison, great example, because they would come in. A lot of the guys could teach the anger management class, or they could teach the drug and alcohol class. As far as they've been to it so many times, in other words, it was just kind of okay. I've got to go to this class.
They knew the content. Yeah.
And they start working with a wild horse, and they're going to start working with delayed gratification. They're going to start working with process to get to the end result. They're going to anger management.
Yeah.
My policy was very upfront. If you're going to get mad, the horse is going to get mad at you. You're going to get mad at the horse. If you abuse a horse or a burro, you're fired on the spot. It's not like, okay, that's one strike. So they knew coming in, that was one of the hard lines that you don't cross. So they knew they would have to, if they did get mad, they'd have to find a way to deal with that, walk away. And I would have guys later say, that really helped me. I thought, that's what I need to be doing when I'm on the outside, is just not saying, okay, I've got to respond, or my anger takes over, just walk away.
Yeah. And it's almost like it's a safe, realistic way to practice these skills that are probably a lot of the skills they struggled with, which got them in the situation they're in to begin with.
Yeah. And, you talk about, like I mentioned, finding the right herd when you get out. I would talk to some guys, say, okay, your family, I'll never forget one guy said, well, the reason I'm in is because I learned how to steal cars from my dad. He taught me how to steal cars. So I said, and that's a whole nother issue. It doesn't mean you say, okay, Dad, I can't ever speak to you again, but that can't become your herd.
Right.
And there are some people who, and I did some things at the women's prison, which women are more apt to have had an abusive person. It may be a family member. See, there are some that aren't safe at all. You just say, okay, that's not my herd. And at this point, speaking of that, how I started using horses for an illustration on life, I had a BLM horse that had gone to a couple of trainers, severely abused. It was drugged through cactus. It was hobbled with pig and string. It was lame. It had cactus all in it. And when I got it, and there were charges being filed on the people who did this. So I get the horse, the horse just, after it realized, it would shake when he walked up. It just thought, oh, you're going to hurt me. So after I got where I could start working with the horse, I could, that horse followed me everywhere, So I had a event coming up, and I decided to go ahead and just do a clinic for abused women. So it was so here's me in a gelding doing a clinic for abused women. But at the end of that, it was so moving. I could just see Kleenexes being passed, because I talked about the process of going from abuse. The abuse never excused the abuser, but we weren't going to allow the abuser to control life further. So anyway, there's just so many illustrations. I rode the horse for the first time ever in that clinic and talked about that the abuse didn't change purpose or value, but we had to factor that in to get there. So, but at the end of that, I just thought that was so much more impactful than trying to find some points and some psychological or spiritual, some things to try to get people to understand or pontificate about. Just something about a horse I've had women, years later say, oh, that really made an impact. So that's when I started using horses more and finding different things. And sometimes the horse will do things, make a better point than I had planned anyway. So
yeah, I bet.
Yeah, I'll do. So you familiar with like Country Thunder? Arizona has a big country western outdoor, kind of like a country western.
Mm-hmm.
So I do cowboy church in the middle of Country Thunder every year. And so I have my horse out there, and they've got, the bleachers, and it's really fun because we just talk about life stuff. And I think if I were to go out there and say, okay, I want to do a church service, everybody go, yeah, right. You got a horse and it's a cowboy church. It's like, and a band, and so it really opens up a lot of doors. One time I was doing the cowboy church at Country Thunder, and I was talking about finding your purpose. If you find your purpose, you'll end up finding peace. It's not the other way around. And so I said, this horse's purpose is to try his best to figure out what I'm asking him to do. So I reached over and took the headstall off, and I'd point right, left. He'd go right, left. And we went over a couple of little obstacles. I was turning him, and there was a pedestal to the right. I could feel him. I didn't have any no rain control, so I could feel him see that pedestal. He got up all 4 feet, just on the pedestal, and everybody clapped. And I said, the cool thing is that's not what I wanted the horse to do.
Yeah.
But the cooler part is he did what he thought I wanted him to do. And so that, to me, became the best part, because it was like, well, I said, in life, I got to get this right. I got to, just do your best to do what you can. This is the right. Anyway, so sometimes horses, he fell once in a clinic. We're going over a teeter-totter bridge, and he fell. Mm-hmm. And we got up and we did the teeter-totter again. And I just stopped talking about, sometimes stuff just falls apart. And you fall down and go, I don't know why. He was trusting me to do something, and it just didn't work. So like 3 years later, it was an outdoor country western thing, but it wasn't Country Thunder. I had somebody come up to me and said, "You're the cowboy church guy." I said, "Well," I was there when that horse fell. I'll never forget that point. And I thought, gosh, So anyway, I love working with them. I'm always learning. So. And working with different issues as well, not just with inmates. And I still work with the inmates that got out, and some of them are training horses. Yeah, I've got an event coming up. It's not a competition; it's a trainer's challenge, and we'll have these horses that we have like 6 trainers, 6 horses, and we've got 3 days to get as far as we can. I say it's not a competition. It'll be me, and then there are 2 of the former inmates that are also trainers that are in the challenge. So that'll be a fun one.
Yeah, that will be really neat. What is that one called?
That is it's in Chino Valley. Purina Feed is putting it on, and it's at Olson's Feed. It's the end of May 31st, and so I told the guys, I said, it's not a competition, but I better win.
Yeah, you better be doing your best.
Actually, really almost the other way around. I would be so proud of them if they won.
Yeah.
So
that's really neat.
Yeah.
So what are some of the ways that you have kind of seen the horses heal or teach the inmates? As I'm sure you saw, a lot of them probably came from situations where they may not have ever even learned to function differently. How did the horses help them?
Yeah, one, just the whole aspect of bonding, and I'm really a big advocate for horses, and even programs that have dogs or something to get the guys bonding and outside of themselves. But horses are so big, and there's such a need in these guys' lives. And, we would have guys that would, on their 3rd, 4th time in prison, and they realize, okay, this looks like it's going to give me my life, because I don't know, they don't have the tools when they get out. So I'll never forget, I was walking by, happened to, I don't know what media, but there was a documentary being done. And so when they were talking to inmates, I intentionally didn't hover around them. I didn't want to think, okay, you got to say the right thing.
Right, that you're
But
sitting
I
there
was
watching
walking. Yeah, I was walking by, and I heard the interviewer say, "So what's the most important thing you think you've gotten out of this?" And he said, without hesitation, he said, "A work ethic." He said, I said, "I was in a gang. You always take shortcuts. You want money, you steal money. You want drugs, you find a way to get drugs. You're always taking shortcuts. And there's never a satisfaction at the end of the day saying, I did this, I accomplished something, and just a reward in that." And I remember thinking, well, whatever, if he never touches a horse again, that is a recipe for success.
Yeah.
That was probably, he got out, I bet 6-7 years ago. And he was over at my house the other day. He's got 4 horses now. He's got a great job. And it was his third or fourth time in. He's a kind of a traditional, or typical would be a better way of putting it, Apache Native American. Got his hair braided down to, his back. He looks, and to see him succeed, really, honestly, it's worth it all.
Yeah,
to
that's gotta
me.
be really incredible to see that transformation from someone who thought that they'd be in prison for the rest of their life to making a good, healthy life outside of it.
Yeah, I mean, he's married now. He's got, and I'm up at my ranch up in Prescott right now, but I on the way up here, I stopped to see one of the guys who went through the program, had never worked with a horse in his life, and when he got out, he said, I really consider you to be my adopted dad, and to go from being a supervisor in a prison. So the baby was born, so he got married, and we were, part of that, and then they got a beautiful baby. So they said, you got to come by and see your grandbaby. But those things to me it makes it worth it all. It really does.
Yeah. I mean, amazing that such good things can come out of, prison, which is not always a good thing and not always a good learning experience.
One of the complaints that I would have it on two sides. I would say, well, one, these horses should never be rounded up, should never be gathered, should be left alone. So there's that argument. And then there's the argument of the same arena of argument. The other people say they're feral, they all need to be destroyed. So it's like, but I just never entered into either one of those arenas. The other one was people would see a documentary and say, these guys look like they're having fun. They're in prison. They should be punished. They should. And so my comment always was, we get horses in the program. Not the one who decided what horse needs to come in, but what we're going to do is we're going to give that horse every possible opportunity we can to be the best it can be when it gets out. I'm going to do the same for these inmates. Yeah. So I want them to enjoy something. I want them to enjoy coming and working with horses. I want them to have a sense of pride and satisfaction because I want to.
That's crazy. So, why wouldn't we? Wouldn't we want them to come out better? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So and they think, well, the whole point is punishment. The whole point is so when they get out, they become a productive part of society, and they, so anyway,
that should be the whole point for,
that should be, So I never got involved in those debates that I want them to give them the best tools they can to be the best that they can be. So some of the inmates, a lot of them had zero experience with horses when they came in. They were the easier ones typically. I've had a couple that were just as good that came in with horse experience, but usually guys that came in with horse experience, they had too many things to unlearn. It was usually that aggressive cowboy thing, and that which the way I was raised. As far as breaking horses, you had typical pen. You had a snubbing post in the middle, and you snubbed the horse up, and you blanketed it out, and you twisted his ear. You got the head, and got a saddle on it, and got on,
and kind of forced submission.
Yeah. So I would tell the guys, and in clinics I'd say the same thing. The old method was pretty much all correction. It was, okay, I don't want the horse to back up, so I'm going to snub it out and I'm going to make it back up till it hurts so that I can tell it not to back up. I don't ever want the horse to buck with me on it, so I'm going to get on it, make it buck so I can tell it not to buck. So if we can work with progressive rather than corrective, where all I look for, it's probably not totally true, but what I mainly look for is the yes. I look for that horse to do something that I can take the pressure off and say that's what I'm looking for. And so the piece or the take the pressure away is my yes. So I'm always building on the yeses. You may have 100 no's, and if you're always correcting, then the horse just going to be frustrated. So if you find that yes, the horse, I really like no pressure, so they'll want to come back.
Did you see that was something that kind of transitioned to your work with the inmates too, to kind of focus on, the positive?
There were a few things, and early on I started really, when I was doing the tip training, I would have a couple of wild horses, periodically that I was working with. And I found that the horse starts wanting to please you, and if it's all corrective, the horse just wants you to leave it alone. A good example: I had this mare come in, and I had two horses, but this one horse, got where round pen, got where I could touch the face, very skittish, untrusting, and petted a little bit, and then started working down pet withers and then couldn't get towards the rear. If you got too much past that rib cage, she would it wasn't just like she'd move away, she'd panic and just bolt. So I'm getting frustrated thinking, you stupid horse, why don't you, just.
What is wrong with you?
And so finally I got to the rear. She's standing there, she's looking back, and I could see scars where a lion tried to bring her down. So, It was pivotal for me because I thought, I can look at behavior and think, they shouldn't be doing that. This is wrong.
Right.
This is, rather than, I don't know why, I don't know what causes that. Is it something that's just a stupid reaction? Maybe, but it may be that a lion tried to take a horse down, or you said, man, that's a touchy area. But the reason I say that with people as well, I would joke with the inmates. Ray, so that's a lot of the way I communicate. But so a bunch of us were standing around, had maybe 5 or 6 inmates there. And so, they were talking a little bit about what got them in prison. And I said, I'll tell you guys something. I've never made a mistake in my life, but I read books about people who have, so that I can relate to you guys. So they're kind of quiet for me. Then one of them started laughing. And I said, no, bottom line is we've all done stupid things. We've all made mistakes. And so I tell you what I'll do. As soon as I reach perfection, I'll start judging you guys. But until then, we'll all start working through our own issues together out here. But and one of the things, and this used to surprise me. Now it doesn't, but it kind of surprises me. This was something that the guys picked up on when they're talking about the program. Invariably, they'll say, well, Mr. Helm treated us like real people. Treat us like human beings. I was walking in here in Prescott, walking into a supply place, and this guy was walking in. We kind of almost bumped into each other. I was coming out, and he was going in, and he had a beard, and so then I hear him say, "Mr. Helm," or something. Did you used to run the Wild Horse Program at the prison? I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well," he said, "I thought that was you." This has been years. He's been out for I don't know how many years. He said, I was a clerk in the warehouse, so you were over there quite a bit. And he said, I always was impressed with how you treated me and the other inmates. You treated us like people. And I thought that's positive on one part. It's sad on another. That there are people in that industry that are so condescending and arrogant towards these guys. And then we wonder why they don't have self-esteem. So anyway, it was just, I thought, that here was a guy that wasn't even in the program, and that's what he mentioned. So.
Yeah.
But I'll tell the guys that I'll give this horse every chance to make the right decision. And I'm not expecting perfection. So I'm not going to treat you worse than I'm going to treat a wild horse.
Yeah.
So
it
just
a good
became
lesson. Yeah. For both people and horses. I think it's definitely something that we reflect to our horses a lot, that, hey, I can have emotions and breakdowns, but you better just behave perfectly all the time.
Yeah. So, and horses have opened the door for, I've ended up traveling overseas and doing just the notoriety of the program.
Wow.
Has opened up a lot of doors, mainly in the equine therapy
Yeah.
organizations that will be researching that and find some of the documentaries on the program. I went to it was a few years ago. I had an invitation to go to Denmark and work with equine therapists there and horses, Icelandic horses, and so we're working on that. And then these people in France found out I was going to be in Denmark and said, "Well, can you come over to France as well?" So I
Wow.
could have gone to Paris or to the French Riviera, and the French Riviera. I don't know desire really to go to Paris, so. So I was in southern France. They flew over a Pryor Mountain, Wyoming Mustang. And so it was just the coolest thing. I'm in southern France working with a Wyoming Mustang
Wow.
in a clinic. And then on into Denmark, we're working with a conference there. And then been to Uruguay. The president of Uruguay sent a team, a couple of people over to evaluate the prison program so they could take the principals back and work with troubled teens. So I've been to Uruguay working with them. It's just a lot of opportunities. I feel very, very blessed, very, very fortunate to be able to do what I do.
Yeah, it is very neat. I'll admit that it sounds weird, but like that's my dream job, is to do something like you did with the Wild Horse Inmate Program. When I got my mare, it was just incredible to see the inmates working with them. And I remember one inmate showed me my mare, and he hadn't really worked with her. My mare had been worked with someone who wasn't there, but he was telling me about a horse he had been working with that had just colicked, and you could just see him getting teary-eyed because the horse hadn't made it or whatever.
Yeah.
But you could just really tell the horses were having a huge. I mean, I was just with them half an hour maybe. Such a huge impact that the horses were having on them, and being able to, I think, bring a different perspective to their lives where maybe they never knew a different way of living for a lot of them.
Yeah. Wild Horse Redemption. Did you see that? It's
I
on
have watched that.
It's on all the Colorado. And I tell people, on movies that we were loosely a part of the movie The Mustang. And I didn't care for it. There was so many stereotypes you tried to build in, it became unrealistic. But so I'll tell people, the Wild Horse Redemption. I think you get the inmates' candid stories. It's not the scripted thing, and to me it was much more fulfilling. So
that is incredible. Why do you think it is that, like, why don't we have more programs like this? We have all these Mustangs sitting around and holding, all these prisoners, inmates that are trying to figure out life or not in a good position.
There are some great people in the Bureau of Land Management, but there are a significant number that really it's all about them. It's all about career. It's all about their little area. And I used to tell people, I said, one of the hardest things sometimes is to try to word it in such a way that the BLM thinks it's their idea. Then they'll go with it.
Yeah.
I recently testified twice before the Washington State Senate because they were wanting to get a wild horse program started there. Unanimously approved. Then COVID hit, it was tabled, and then they asked me to testify again, approved again. They have a prison facility approved. And I told the senator that I was working with, your biggest challenge at this point is the federal government, because it's got to be a partnership. And that's unfortunate, because if you looked at the monetary savings of inmates that get, let's say even our recidivism rate was probably 10, maybe 15. For the first 3 years, we were at zero recidivism. But if you look, let's say you're at 30%. The national average is 60% will return in 3 years. So if you're at 30% and they never return, that person not only is not a drain on society as far as monetarily in other ways, but they become a productive part of society, become a productive person. The savings for states and government, if you just look at it dollar and cents without all the other things, but the politics of it gets a little frustrating. And one of the reasons you'll have some of the activists saying, well, you shouldn't, it's too politically charged of a program, rather than just say, well, we're just going to do what's best for these guys. But they already have the horses. It's not like we're going to go out and grab a bunch of horses. They already have them. So let's just do the best we can with the horses that we have. But I'm hoping that Washington State is able to start a program there. It doesn't have to be a huge. We maxed out at about 1,000 horses. Arizona has a lot of burros as well, but it doesn't have to be a huge program. Just enough.
And that has such a domino effect. If these guys are getting out, making their lives better, not just for them, like they're affecting the generations that come after them. You know, that now that there's a father in the home that's a contributing member of society, teaching their children that. So I really hope that they get some more programs going and use the Mustangs for it.
I do too. And some of that, it's one of those issues that kind of isn't on the radar in Washington. There's such a state, and not every state has the wild horse populations, but it's something to get it on the radar where they really start addressing it and realize the benefit with. So obviously with inmates, when I was in Denmark, a lot of the therapists there work with people with disabilities, physical disabilities, learning disabilities. When I don't think what year it was, probably doesn't matter, but I think 99. My youngest son went into the military. Shortly after that, we decided to adopt 3 girls that were in the developmentally delayed foster care. And one of the girls was 5 and had been misdiagnosed, and finally they diagnosed her that she had autism. They thought she was learning disabled, but then she gets into kindergarten and teacher called and said, she's at the top of my class. She's very, but she's socially. So, as a matter of fact, I'm picking her up at the airport tomorrow. She's in Dallas now. She's a nurse, but horses. She went on to college, and I remember going out there one day. And she's sitting on one of the Mustangs. She's got the halter on backwards, so the bottom piece is between the eyes. And she's sitting in the horse. It was next to the fence, big drafty Mustang. She climbed up and was sitting on the horse bareback with just the halter. Horse is kind of looking at me, and she says, "Hi, Daddy." I looked over and said, "Hi, sweetie, and you okay?" "Yeah." But I think those things. I go out sometimes. All the girls got their horse out there brushing it or whatever. But I think we underestimate sometimes how powerful that is, and there are studies on why. But it really is a powerful thing. Kids are like autism is one thing that she was socially awkward, and still to a large extent is. Horses didn't care. They didn't. So it was just this acceptance for who they were. And so I think that alone, such a large animal, so that alone was pretty healing and restorative kind of thing, and helps them move forward.
Yeah. Do you feel like that helped her a lot? Just gaining some confidence with being able to have horses with her life.
Yeah, and I really think that you really hit it. I think it's a lot of it just that confidence, self-esteem, and acceptance. And there's only so much like. They kind of expect the parents going to say, "Oh, you're wonderful."
Right. Yeah.
But here's this horse that just follows you around and wants to be with you, and So I really do.
Did you find that same thing with inmates? That they maybe gained a level of acceptance as well, working with the horses?
Yeah, absolutely. So almost all of them would say, what you learn. Almost all of them would say patience.
Yeah.
But
they're good
probably,
teachers for that.
Probably second or third on the list is just that area of acceptance, and and I think one of and I wish there were more programs like this, but when we find those teaching moments and kind of help the guys make that connection. We'll, for instance, be working with a horse and say, okay, what we really want to do is get the horse into the horse trailer, whatever it is. How do we do that? Well, the goal is not the horse trailer. The goal is to get the horse to say, okay, I need to take one step towards the horse trailer. It's all about the little things that build up to that, rather than I've got to get to this goal. So, the process is really critical. And so someone, just stop and allow the guy to be able to process that, say, okay, that's really, I used to say, sometimes the smallest step can be the biggest step of your life. But I would use that with horses. The horse takes, maybe half a step, maybe an inch in the right direction. You take all the pressure off. Say, that's what I'm looking for. So it becomes a huge step. The stepping onto a tarp, for instance, the horse is trusting you, saying, I don't know what's under this thing. And so the smallest step is really huge. The guys in there with drug and alcohol issues, if I have a guy gets out and called and said, Mr. Helm, I got my 30-day chip. I know, and sometimes it's actually, they'll say something like that. I know it's not much. Hold it right there. It's huge. Okay.
Yeah.
So, we, get my composure here, but people, and I think we learn this some with horses, but people they're so down on themselves that they failed so many times.
Yeah.
And there's something just about, a basic, not even a huge, wow, you're amazing, good job.
Yeah.
You did good. And you did that right. I remember one time we had a guy he liked the adrenaline rush, and he'd come in, horse is sweaty, and I was, what are you doing? I was running the horse. I was teaching the horse to run. A horse knew how to run before it went up to the, So I always, slow down, slow down, slow down. Mm-hmm. So I drove up. I was watching him. He was working in a round pen with a horse, and so I said, watching for a minute, I said, "Hey," called him by name, and I said, "You're doing a good job." And he looked at me, and then a little while later, he walked away from his horse, walked out the gate, walked over, said, "Are you messing with me?" He said it in a nice way. Are you messing with me? I said, "No, you're doing a good job." But I thought that's sad, in that even a compliment. He said, "Oh, you're probably not even serious." So to me, sometimes we'll do that with horses. We'll say, you did that right. When I'm training a horse, I'll always say, good for you. You did that. The horse doesn't know what I'm saying, but it can sense, I'll pet it, and people need that much more affirmation. I had early on in the program, had a young guy, and he had been in prison a couple of times, happened to, for the sake of this story, but the fact was he happened to be African-American, and got out there. And that was an issue early on. I couldn't get African Americans to sign up. And I really wanted, not for some political reason, I wanted there to be a good racial diversity in that program. I think there was something about white cowboy.
Yeah, the stereotype.
Yeah. And so remember, we had a couple of guys came out and one of them said, I went and told some of my friends, we get treated we get treated good out there. So then it was not an issue.
Just need to get the word out.
Yeah. So, but I drove up one morning, and this young guy came up, and he said he wanted to talk to me. I said, okay, let's wrap up a couple of things. I thought it was something to do with horses, and so we're talking, or he comes up and he said, I just want to let you know that I consider you to be the father I never had. And it was such, because I'm looking at him, being in his, middle 20s, and history, that most of the guys didn't have a dad or had an absentee or so. But when he walked away, I felt what my response to him, I just said, I'd be honored to have a son like you. And, we talked a little bit. And, but that is such a huge thing that they get from horses, but it starts that the horses break down those barriers. I don't think he wouldn't have walked up to me. It's that process, and we talk about mental health issues and some of the behavioral things where a person gets to be involved in a process that the horse really has, I think, broken down a lot of the barriers. The first documentary, I think the first documentary done was ABC News. It was one of their affiliates did a larger story. And then I had a friend of mine that was, he had done a story on me when I was working, just training with the BLM before the program or anything. And so he was working with USA Today. And he called me and he said, we're doing a segment. It's called I Am America. And he said, it's little like 3 to 5 minute clips of different people who, different cross section. He said, so I thought of you, the work we had done in the past. He said, would you be interested? I said, yeah. I said, I'd be interested, but I said, I'd like to come out and look at the program out here. Well, he came out and looked at the program. He said, well, forget the I Am America thing. We want to do a documentary. And that documentary, they aired it on their network, one of their affiliate networks, and then it hit social media. And I got a call. He said, this thing's exploding on social media. We've never had this happen. He said, usually something goes viral is almost always like a 2 minute, a short one. And he said, for a documentary to go viral, he said, so would you log on and answer some questions? So I logged on. It's like 80,000 views. So I thought, wow, that's, so I answered, obviously there weren't 80,000 questions. So just, some questions, comments. So then the next day it was over 100,000. And so it hit over 3 million just on Facebook. And so during that time, I called him and said, man, I said, I've got a real problem with your documentary. He said, what's that? I said, well, you made me look way too good. So now I've got to try to live up to your hype. So he had a great, he said, well, we are the media. We could have made you look really bad. So I said, okay.
Take that.
So that document, and then some others, the Economist out of London, Australia. We were, had 2 documentaries in France. And then I was written up in a magazine there, and they so I get this thing from somebody, a friend of mine in France said, well, you're written up in a magazine over here. They call you Mr. Mustang. It was in French. So my wife is French, Spanish. And so I said, honey, could you embroider on all my shirts, Mr. Mustang? So just kind of a joke. So, but
that sounds fitting.
Yeah. But my point is, just the horses open up so many doors. And the neat thing about horses too, whether, working with Icelandic horses, working with, in whether France or Uruguay, whatever, gauchos, I work with the gauchos down in Uruguay. Horses, the pressure release, they all speak the same language. I don't have to learn another language. Say, okay, I'm going to Germany or wherever. Say, just pressure release. Let them know that you're not going to hurt them, and so that's really cool. And I think that's one of the reasons we talk about inmates or people with behavioral issues, that they don't have to learn some complex thing. They just have this simple process. So I feel very fortunate to be able to have done and continue to do what I do. So I'm still traveling quite a bit, working a lot with I'm a veteran, so I work a lot with veterans and first responders. So
And what have you seen there? How has that all played out?
It's really amazing. So the guys I work with, I say guys, they're the last one we did. We'll do an intensive that's 8 days. So we'll start one Sunday morning and end up the next Sunday. So a full week. You've got the veteran and their family, and so you'll have, you're dealing with PTSD issues primarily. Yeah. And so great. The last one we did, this one guy, he's kind of quiet, and I'd read the stuff, the information. And so I knew that he was a Purple Heart recipient and Iraq. So most of the people I deal with are Iraq, Afghanistan. So I was Vietnam era. So so we had these wild horses in. So this horse comes in, and the guy he was quieter. So I start getting the horse to face him, I don't know if you like in training, spot training a horse, where you can train a horse to go to a certain spot, and you take the pressure off. Still pressure release. So I'm thinking when we started dealing with these guys, but how do I get the horse to come up to another person? It's not me. So I just started using that person every time the horse get close to them. I take all the pressure away. So before long, the horse is standing right in front of him.
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't do this to any of the other ones. I said, I want you to drop down, just get down on one knee. He looked back at me. I said, just get down on one knee.
It's like, what, are you crazy?
Yeah. Gets down on one knee, and it was a mare that he's dealing with. He goes and puts her nose right there. He breaks down. Everybody's crying.
Wow.
So, sometimes those little breakthroughs, it's just this horse, this wild, that, is just her face, her nose is right there. And but I think at the end of those, though, you spend a week, and we're doing other things. There are therapists there working with them, and it really is incredible.
Yeah.
The last one I did was a reunion event where we'll just meet with,
neat.
one day thing, and we'll do those periodically so that they come back with their whole family, do trail rides, and so it's an ongoing. It's not just a one-time deal.
Yeah,
so
that's really neat.
One of the things in the inmate program we trained a lot of horses for Border Patrol. We would have Mexican nationals who were arrested by Border Patrol training Border Patrol horses to catch.
So that's a little bit of irony there, huh?
So we had one event. We had the National Border Patrol Conference wanted to come up, and they wanted to see some demonstrations. So they all come up, and so I said we were going to demonstrate apprehensions. So I'm on my way out to the obstacle area. It was like a 7-acre obstacle area, and we had some brush on one part of it. And I said, where are all the Mexican nationals? I said, oh, they volunteered to be the illegals that are. I said, no. I said, get them back in here. I said, one, just the optics of it, and so we were looking. I said, okay. I pointed a couple. I said, today you're going to be Border Patrol. So they all cracked up. But what was funny with that, a couple of them couldn't speak English. So one of the parts we had an apprehension, and then I had one of the guys designated to run away. So we got like maybe 4 or 5 guys there. One guy's going to run away, and we're demonstrating how to keep those people contained if you got an extra one and you apprehend the other person. The one guy starts running away. I'll never forget the look on this one guy. He didn't speak English. He just takes off, starts running with the guy. I said, we're getting away here or something. So it was hilarious, But to have those guys training horses for the Border Patrol, and talk about Mustangs. I had a similar situation where they did an apprehension. There were 2 Border Patrol agents. They get off their horses to do the apprehension. And one of the guys jumped up and started running. And so his horse was standing there, ground tied, sees the guy running, spun around and chased the guy down. And the guy fell down, and the horse stood right over him until the agent got over there. And they were saying, once these horses learn and so it's a Mustang, once they learn their job, they just love it. People run, we chase them. So it really is great. It was a great experience and great program. I wish there were so many more. I really do. And, it would take some just a cooperative agreement and maybe somebody spearheading a few of them and try to address some of the things.
Yeah.
You get and it's not just, like a cowboy thing. Matter of fact, you get some of these guys that were in a gang. They were, in the city, never experienced horses. It's almost more dramatic for them. And
I could see that.
So then one of the guys in the program, he's getting ready to get out, and he said, Mr. Helm, so what I would do then, and politics, it got changed after I left. But my policy was that if they bonded with a horse and they were training a horse and they had the means to take care of that horse, we'd waive all the fees so they could take that horse with them.
Yeah.
this guy said, he really wanted his horse, and so we were working it out. He said, I was a gangbanger. He said, one of the things with this, he said, none of my old friends have anything to do with horses, so it's going to force me into a different herd of people who work with horses. And so it just gives them a whole new worldview and life.
New life, yeah.
They end up with, working on themselves, not just working on a horse. They'll all say, I had to realize that I wasn't the teacher. The horse was the teacher.
Yeah. So, and a lot of that desire for them to change themselves, do you feel like the horses facilitated that?
Absolutely. To be a better man, a better husband, a better whatever, that what we're doing with horses there is to give them a chance at a better life. And so they would pretty much always have a little bit of emotion when the horse had been working with, they had bonded with over 4 or 5 months sometimes, gets adopted. But their perspective on it was different, where they would see that as, okay, they were getting ready to get out. They were wanting to get out of prison and start their new life. So here this horse is getting out and starting their new life. So they would have that perspective.
Yeah, kind of that empathy with the horse. And
that connection and would continue. If I have a question, if somebody contacts me and says, I've got this horse, they'll send me a picture. I'll send it to 2 or 3 of the guys that got out. They'll always tell me what horse. Oh, that horse was so-and-so trained.
They remember them, huh?
They do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it really is.
That's really cool.
Really is neat.
Do you think, so I hear a lot when people talk about kind of horses and how they help them, that you go into a horse and the horse is non-judgmental, right? They're just judging you based on your behavior in the moment. Is that something that you also saw with the inmates?
Yeah.
Because I mean, in the world, we're very judgmental of, these people that they've done something wrong. And I think we probably all have stories or ideas about what they did wrong and why they ended in that situation that they probably are constantly bombarded with. Is that a big change for them to be with a horse now that is like, I have no idea what you did, and it doesn't really matter? Yeah.
And there's certainly that aspect. And horses, especially the wild horses, so many great analogies for the inmates. Every horse that comes in. So if we had new horses come in or burros come in out of the wild, we would prep them, which meant we would put the freeze mark on their neck and vaccinate and whatever else. But so I would ask the guys, how many of you know your ADC number? They've got it on their shirts. And they're a number. Everywhere. So I said, so look, this horse has a number. This all equates to numbers. This is going to follow them for the rest of their life. So somebody who really doesn't care for the BLM wild horses, because that's a Mustang, or have the stereotype, so well, they're not worth anything. Right. So what this horse has to do is just surpass the low bar that's set for it and start exceeding that low bar. Before long, the negative becomes a positive. So it just gave me, so when you get out, if somebody says, oh, you're worthless, whatever, just all you have to do is just exceed that low bar. Before long, somebody's going to say, man, you mean you were in prison? You're the best employee I have, or, whatever it is. So don't get hung up. And I would take, for instance, I would take my most expensive saddle out there for this and say, okay, this saddle is $4,000. I got it on a $125 horse. Does that make any sense at all? And I said, no. I say, well, it really does, because for me, the horse is not a $125 horse. So when you get out, don't say, well, my value is this. So you just let people just load you up with trash and treat you like trash.
Thank you so much for being here. I think the work that you have done, and such a template for hopefully future stuff of how horses can really help, people in all lanes of life, no matter where you are. I really think that they have just a power to teach us those lessons that we need. And I think the work you did really shows just how they were able to help people transform their lives. So I'm so grateful that you were willing to come on and share it. And I'm probably going to be stalking you a little bit and looking at all your videos and learning more about it, because I just think just from the short time I was able to see it, it's just such an incredible program, and just being able to have horses help us in that way.
Thank you for joining us and learning about horses that heal and the humans who help them. We hope you'll continue with us on this journey. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite platform and follow The Touch of a Mustang on any of the major social media outlets. Please share with your friends, anyone who loves horses, or anyone who might be struggling and could benefit from this message. If you have felt the healing power of horses or help them in their divinely appointed mission, please reach out. We want to hear your story. As we say goodbye, always remember that the horse is always there to help you heal.